For decades, military strength in West Africa has often been measured by one simple question: which country spends the most on defense? The larger the military budget, the stronger the nation was assumed to be. But today, that assumption is being challenged by a new reality emerging across the Sahel. While Nigeria continues to lead the region with the largest defense budget and one of Africa's biggest armed forces, another country with far fewer financial resources has captured international attention for a completely different reason. Under the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traore, Burkina Faso has introduced a different vision of national defense, one that places equal importance on military modernization, national unity, and the determination of ordinary citizens to defend their homeland. This shift comes at a time when West Africa is facing its most serious security crisis in decades. Terrorist organizations continue to operate across vast stretches of the Sahel. Border regions remain vulnerable, millions of civilians have been displaced, and governments are under growing pressure to protect both their sovereignty and their people. As these challenges intensify, defense budgets have risen across the region. Modern drones have replaced many traditional battlefield strategies, and military alliances are being reshaped. Yet an important question remains: does spending more money automatically create a stronger military? Or is true military power measured by something much deeper: the ability to protect national territory, restore public confidence, strengthen institutions, and unite citizens behind a common purpose? In today's video, we will rank the 7 West African countries with the largest defense budgets while going far beyond simple financial comparisons. We will examine how each nation is modernizing its armed forces, why the Alliance of Sahel States is changing the regional security landscape, and how Ibrahim Traore has become one of the most discussed political figures in Africa's new security era. Most importantly, we will explore whether West Africa is witnessing the birth of an entirely new model of military power, one defined not only by weapons and budgets, but by sovereignty, resilience, and national determination. If you enjoy thoughtful analysis of Africa's changing geopolitical landscape, consider subscribing and joining us for more in-depth discussions. The countdown begins with the country ranked 7th, Niger. At first glance, Niger may not appear to belong among West Africa's major military powers. Its economy remains relatively small, and its defense budget is significantly lower than those of regional giants such as Nigeria. However, numbers alone fail to tell the full story. Over the past decade, Niger has become one of the most strategically important countries in the entire Sahel because of its geographic position and the security threats surrounding it. Sharing borders with 7 countries, including Mali, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, Libya, Algeria, Chad, and Benin, Niger occupies the heart of one of Africa's most volatile regions. Armed extremist groups move across these vast desert frontiers, making border security one of the country's greatest challenges. As a result, the government has steadily increased defense spending, with recent estimates placing its annual military budget between approximately $400 and $500 million. Rather than investing in a massive conventional army, Niger has focused on surveillance, mobility, intelligence gathering, and rapid response capabilities designed to secure its extensive borders. In 6th place is Senegal, a country that represents a very different model of military development. Unlike many of its neighbors in the Sahel, Senegal has enjoyed decades of relative political stability. Consequently, its armed forces have evolved with an emphasis on professionalism rather than emergency expansion. Its defense budget, also estimated at roughly $400 to $500 million annually, supports gradual modernization instead of rapid militarization. Senegal's strategic priorities are centered on protecting its Atlantic coastline, securing newly developed offshore oil and gas resources, strengthening maritime surveillance, and maintaining one of Africa's most respected peacekeeping forces. The country continues to invest in communication systems, naval capabilities, personnel training, and modern command structures. Instead of preparing for prolonged internal conflict, Senegal focuses on prevention, regional cooperation, and long-term readiness. Although Niger and Senegal occupy similar positions in terms of defense spending, their military priorities reveal two completely different security realities. Niger's resources are directed towards surviving an immediate and persistent insurgency across the Sahel, while Senegal invests in preserving stability before major threats emerge. This contrast illustrates an important lesson that will appear throughout today's ranking. Military budgets alone never explain the true strength of a nation's armed forces. Geography, political stability, strategic objectives, and the nature of security threats often shape military effectiveness just as much as financial resources. Continuing our ranking, we arrive at the fourth position, Ghana, a country that demonstrates how stability itself can become a strategic military advantage. Unlike several of its, however, the rapid deterioration of security across the Sahel has fundamentally reshaped Accra's defense priorities. Ghanaian leaders recognize that terrorism, organized crime, and illegal trafficking rarely remain confined by national borders. What begins hundreds of miles away can eventually threaten economic growth, investor confidence, and regional stability. Recent defense spending is estimated at approximately $600 million annually. While this figure remains modest compared to Nigeria's military budget, Ghana has directed these resources towards strengthening border surveillance, expanding intelligence capabilities, modernizing communications, and enhancing rapid deployment forces. The country has also earned an international reputation through decades of participation in United Nations peacekeeping operations, where Ghanaian soldiers are widely respected for their professionalism and discipline. Rather than preparing for conventional warfare, Ghana's strategy focuses on preventing instability before it reaches its own territory. Moving into third place, Burkina Faso presents perhaps the most remarkable transformation in West Africa's contemporary security landscape. A decade ago, the country's armed forces faced severe pressure as extremist violence spread rapidly across much of its territory. Since then, defense spending has increased substantially, reaching an estimated $700 to $900 million annually. Yet what distinguishes Burkina Faso is not simply the growth of its military budget. It is the country's determination to fundamentally redefine how national defense should operate. Under Captain Ibrahim Traore, military reform has extended beyond acquiring modern equipment. The government has expanded the volunteers for the defense of the homeland, strengthened cooperation between regular armed forces and local defense units, invested in surveillance drones and modern battlefield technologies, and encouraged citizens to view national defense as a shared responsibility. This approach seeks to combine military capability with national solidarity, creating a model in which security depends not only on professional soldiers, but also on the resilience and participation of society itself. The contrast between Ghana and Burkina Faso reveals two equally legitimate but very different defense philosophies. Ghana seeks to preserve stability through preparation, institutional strength, and preventive security measures. Burkina Faso, facing an immediate existential threat, has chosen rapid military adaptation, societal mobilization, and structural reform. Their experiences remind us that military effectiveness is shaped not only by financial resources, but also by geography, political leadership, and the specific security challenges confronting each nation. After examining the defense budgets of West Africa's leading military powers, an even more important question emerges. Does a larger military budget automatically create a stronger army? The answer is far more complex than many people assume. Financial resources certainly matter, but they represent only one part of military capability. A country may spend billions of dollars on defense, yet still struggle to secure its territory if it lacks effective leadership, modern strategy, reliable intelligence, and public support. Nigeria offers the clearest example of this reality. It possesses the largest defense budget, the biggest population, and one of Africa's most powerful armed forces. Its military operates fighter aircraft, naval vessels, armored vehicles, and thousands of well-trained personnel. However, Nigeria also faces an extraordinary combination of security threats, including insurgency in the northeast, armed criminal groups in the northwest, piracy in the Gulf of Guinea, attacks on oil infrastructure, and communal violence in several regions. Managing multiple security crises at the same time places enormous pressure on even the region's strongest military. Mali demonstrates a different approach. Although its defense budget is significantly smaller, years of continuous conflict have forced its armed forces to adapt quickly. Military reforms have emphasized battlefield experience, mobility, intelligence sharing, and closer cooperation with neighboring Burkina Faso and Niger through the alliance of Sahel states. Rather than relying solely on financial strength, Mali has focused on improving operational effectiveness in one of the world's most challenging security environments. These contrasting examples reveal an important lesson. Military power should not be measured only by the amount of money allocated to defense. It should also be evaluated by how effectively that investment is transformed into operational capability, territorial control, and public security. Leadership, strategic planning, logistics, professional training, technological adaptation, and cooperation with regional partners all play essential roles. This broader understanding of military strength helps explain why Burkina Faso has attracted so much international attention despite spending far less than Nigeria. Under Ibrahim Traore, the country's growing influence is linked not simply to its defense budget, but to a new philosophy of national defense that combines military modernization with national unity. That emerging model has sparked an important debate about what truly defines military power in the new era of West Africa. If there is one leader who has reshaped the conversation about military power in West Africa, it is Captain Ibrahim Traore. Unlike traditional military modernization programs that focus primarily on increasing defense budgets or purchasing expensive weapons, Traore has promoted a broader vision of national security. His approach is built on the belief that a country's greatest military strength comes not only from its armed forces but also from the unity, determination, and participation of its people. Since taking office, Traore has supported reforms designed to improve the operational effectiveness of Burkina Faso's armed forces while adapting to the realities of modern asymmetric warfare. The government has expanded the volunteers for the defense of the homeland, strengthened coordination between regular troops and local defense units, increased investment in surveillance drones, and improved rapid response capabilities. These measures are intended to help security forces react more quickly to attacks while expanding their presence across vulnerable regions. What makes Traore's strategy different is that military reform is presented as part of a broader national project rather than an isolated defense policy. He frequently emphasizes national sovereignty, self-reliance, and the responsibility of citizens to contribute to protecting their country. According to this vision, military equipment alone cannot secure a nation if its institutions are weak or if its population has lost confidence in the state's ability to defend them. This philosophy has attracted significant attention throughout Africa. Many observers see Burkina Faso as an example of a country attempting to redefine military power by combining modern technology with national mobilization. At the same time, others caution that these reforms are still being tested under extremely difficult security conditions. Terrorist violence remains a serious challenge, and the long-term success of the strategy will depend on whether military gains can be transformed into lasting stability, stronger institutions, and economic recovery. Regardless of differing opinions, Ibrahim Traore has already changed the regional debate. Instead of asking only how much a country spends on defense, many people are now asking a different question. Can military strength be measured by a nation's ability to unite its citizens, defend its sovereignty, and build resilience during one of the most difficult periods in West Africa's modern history? Although much of the international attention has focused on individual leaders, an equally important development is taking place behind the scenes. The creation of the Alliance of Sahel States, commonly known as the AES, has introduced a new approach to regional security cooperation. Formed by Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, the alliance reflects a shared belief that the security challenges facing the Sahel can no longer be addressed by individual countries acting alone. For many years, armed extremist groups have moved freely across the vast and often remote borders separating these three nations. Military operations conducted by one country frequently push fighters into neighboring territories, allowing insurgent groups to regroup and launch new attacks. Recognizing this pattern, the three governments have sought to strengthen military coordination through joint planning, intelligence sharing, and closer operational cooperation. The AES also represents a broader shift in strategic thinking. Instead of relying primarily on external military assistance, its members emphasize greater regional responsibility for protecting their own territory. This does not necessarily mean rejecting international partnerships. Rather, it reflects a desire to increase the role of African governments in determining security priorities, selecting defense partners, and coordinating military operations according to regional needs. For Ibrahim Traore, the alliance fits naturally within his vision of sovereignty and collective self-reliance. He has repeatedly argued that neighboring countries facing similar threats should combine their experience, resources, and capabilities instead of responding separately to the same security challenges. From this perspective, cooperation becomes a force multiplier, allowing countries with limited financial resources to improve their overall defensive capacity through coordination rather than competition. However, the long-term success of the Alliance of Sahel states remains uncertain. Building an effective regional security framework requires more than political agreements. It demands sustained military coordination, compatible command structures, reliable intelligence networks, adequate funding, and lasting trust among participating governments. These objectives cannot be achieved overnight. Even so, the emergence of the AES has already changed the strategic conversation across West Africa. It demonstrates that regional security may increasingly depend not only on the military strength of individual nations, but also on their willingness to cooperate, share responsibilities, and develop common solutions to challenges that extend far beyond national borders. Beyond military reforms and regional alliances, Ibrahim Traore has emerged as one of the most influential political figures associated with a renewed discussion about Pan-Africanism. His speeches frequently emphasize that Africa's future should be shaped primarily by Africans themselves. Rather than defining sovereignty as isolation from the rest of the world, he presents it as the ability of African nations to make independent decisions based on their own national interests and regional priorities. This message has resonated with many young Africans who see Traore as a symbol of confidence, self-reliance, and determination. Across social media, discussions about his leadership often extend far beyond Burkina Faso. Supporters argue that he represents a generation of leaders willing to challenge long-standing assumptions about security, development, and international partnerships. For them, his appeal lies not only in military reforms, but also in his call for African countries to cooperate more closely with one another while strengthening their own institutions. At the same time, it is important to recognize that public opinion across Africa is far from uniform. While many people admire Traore's emphasis on sovereignty and regional cooperation, others remain cautious about the long-term political and economic consequences of military-led governments. These differing perspectives reflect the diversity of political experiences across the continent rather than a single African viewpoint. One of Traore's most significant contributions has been changing the terms of the debate. Instead of asking whether African countries should cooperate with international partners, the discussion increasingly focuses on how those partnerships should be structured. Questions about equality, mutual respect, national ownership, and strategic independence have become central themes in conversations about the future of West Africa. Whether one supports or questions his policies, Ibrahim Traore has undeniably influenced the regional conversation. His leadership has encouraged many observers to reconsider what sovereignty means in the 21st century. Increasingly, the issue is no longer simply about military strength or political ideology. It is about whether African nations can build strong institutions, protect their citizens, cooperate with their neighbors, and pursue development while maintaining the freedom to make decisions according to their own priorities. As Ibrahim Traore and the Alliance of Sahel states continue to reshape the security landscape of West Africa, their policies have attracted significant attention from Western governments and international organizations. Much of the criticism focuses on three major concerns: the continuation of military-led governments, the protection of human rights during counter-terrorism operations, and the growing security partnerships between the Sahel states and new international allies such as Russia. From the perspective of many Western policymakers, these developments could affect democratic governance, regional stability, and the existing balance of international influence. However, supporters of the new Sahel strategy present a different argument. They point out that years of international military cooperation and extensive foreign assistance did not prevent extremist violence from spreading across large areas of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. From their perspective, the decision to pursue new security partnerships is not primarily about choosing one global power over another. Instead, it reflects an effort to regain greater control over national security policies and diversify international cooperation according to each country's own priorities. Both perspectives deserve careful consideration. Western governments raise legitimate questions about accountability, civilian protection, and long-term political stability. At the same time, the governments of the Alliance of Sahel states argue that every sovereign nation has the right to determine its own defense strategy and select partners that it believes can best address immediate security threats. The central issue therefore extends beyond geopolitical competition. It concerns how national sovereignty can be balanced with responsible governance and effective security policy. Perhaps the most important lesson is that military success cannot be measured only by battlefield victories or diplomatic alliances. Lasting security depends on protecting civilians, strengthening public institutions, promoting economic development, and maintaining the confidence of the population. Whether the emerging strategy pursued by Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger ultimately succeeds will depend not only on military operations but also on their ability to deliver long-term peace, stability, and opportunity for future generations. That remains the ultimate test of any national security strategy. Although the reforms introduced by Ibrahim Traore have attracted widespread attention across Africa, it is equally important to recognize that Burkina Faso continues to face enormous challenges. Military modernization alone cannot immediately resolve a crisis that has developed over many years. Armed extremist groups remain active in several regions. Attacks on security forces and civilians still occur, and millions of people across the wider Sahel continue to live under the constant threat of violence and displacement. These realities remind us that rebuilding national security is a long-term process rather than a quick military victory. Another major challenge is the country's limited economic capacity. Expanding the armed forces, purchasing modern equipment, operating surveillance drones, and supporting local defense units requires significant financial resources. Every additional dollar invested in defense must be balanced against equally important needs such as education, healthcare, infrastructure, and agricultural development. For Burkina Faso, maintaining this balance will be essential if today's military reforms are to produce lasting stability rather than short-term gains. Strong institutions also remain critical. Military operations can recover territory, but only effective civilian administration can restore normal life. Schools must reopen, hospitals must function, roads must be secured, and local governments must regain the confidence of their communities. Without these foundations, security gains may prove difficult to sustain over time. For this reason, many experts argue that military success should always be accompanied by institutional reform, economic opportunity, and responsible governance. The experience of Burkina Faso also offers valuable lessons for other African nations. First, defense budgets should be viewed as investments in national capability rather than symbols of prestige. Second, countries should strengthen regional cooperation because modern security threats rarely stop at national borders. Third, governments should diversify international partnerships while preserving the freedom to make decisions based on their own national interests. Finally, true military strength depends on public trust. Citizens are far more willing to support national defense when they believe their government is protecting both their security and their future. As the story of West Africa continues to unfold, one lesson becomes increasingly clear. The nations that achieve lasting stability will not necessarily be those with the largest military budgets. They will be the countries capable of combining security, effective governance, economic resilience, and national unity into a single long-term strategy for peace and development. The question that opened this discussion remains as relevant now as it was at the beginning. Who is truly the military power of West Africa? If the answer is based only on defense spending, Nigeria clearly occupies the top position. Its enormous population, extensive armed forces, advanced military equipment, and substantial defense budget make it the region's undisputed conventional military leader. Yet, as we have seen throughout this analysis, military power cannot be measured by financial resources alone. Burkina Faso has demonstrated that determination, strategic adaptation, and national mobilization can influence regional security discussions far beyond what its defense budget might suggest. Under Ibrahim Traore, the country has pursued a model that combines military modernization with national unity while strengthening cooperation with Mali and Niger through the alliance of Sahel states. Whether this model ultimately succeeds remains uncertain, but it has already changed how many observers think about sovereignty, regional cooperation, and the future of security across the Sahel. At the same time, the challenges facing West Africa are far from over. Terrorist violence, economic pressures, humanitarian crisis, and the need for stronger public institutions continue to test every government in the region. No military strategy, regardless of its ambition, can achieve lasting peace without economic growth, accountable governance, quality education, and opportunities for future generations. The strongest nations will be those capable of combining military preparedness with sustainable national development. Perhaps the greatest lesson from this evolving story is that Africa's future security will depend less on competition and more on cooperation. Countries that share intelligence, coordinate regional operations, strengthen their institutions, and invest in their people will be better prepared to confront the complex threats of the 21st century. Military strength begins with weapons, but it endures through resilient societies and effective leadership. As African news continues to follow the changing security landscape across West Africa, the role of the African Union, Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore, Assimi Goïta, Abdourahmane Chiani, France, Mali, Niger, and the wider Sahel will remain central to this historic transformation. Thank you for watching. If you found this analysis valuable, please subscribe to the channel, share your thoughts in the comments below, and join us again for more in-depth discussions about the future of Africa. We sincerely appreciate your time and support. Every video on this channel is carefully researched, thoughtfully written, and meticulously edited by our dedicated team. We don't rely on automated production or shortcuts to create our content. Every story, every visual, and every detail is crafted with genuine care, passion, and a commitment to bringing you meaningful, high-quality videos.